So I'll begin today with just reading Beth's bio, though of course you all know it already, which is why you showed up today. I'm assuming it was for her, not so much for me. But her mission is to understand what's next, navigate change, and to help others do the same. This is a little bit of a long bio, but I think it's important for everybody to hear it because all the questions are going to come from this. So she spent nearly 3 decades at GE and retired in 2018 as vice chair leading innovation. She was previously chief marketing and commercial officer. She initiated GE's clean energy and digital transformations. She developed new businesses, increased GE's brand value, and partnered to enhance its inventive culture. She was responsible for the company's sales, marketing, and communications functions and was its first CMO in 20 years. That's interesting. And then as president of Integrated Media NBC Universal, which, by the way, Comcast NBC Universal is the sponsor for the book tour. So thank you to them because they are paying my bills and allowing me to do this. So when Beth was over there, she oversaw television advertising revenue and the company's digital efforts, including early development of Hulu.com. And her first book, Imagine It Forward, is about working and living on the front lines of change. It was published in 2018, and she has been on the Fortune and Forbes lists of the world's most powerful women and named a LinkedIn top 10 influencer. Did I miss some? I'm sure I missed a lot. How'd I do?
You did well. You did well. I'm always suspicious of people with long bios. So thanks for even making it shorter though.
Did you imagine that you'd be this person growing up? And I think maybe my question really is sort of what role did ambition play in the beginning of your career?
I certainly never imagined I would have had the career that I did, that I'd be sitting here talking to you from New York City. I grew up in a small town in Virginia in the Shenandoah Valley. But you know, it's interesting. I don't really know when the ambition started, but I found something a couple years ago that gave me a good clue. It was like I was doing my own archaeological dig of my old stuff, and I found this project I had when I was 14. I had to write my autobiography, and trust me, there was nothing interesting. Like maybe I kissed Nick Thomas or something. But what I found was this amazing little clip, and it said, "I am ambitious. I want to be 50 different things when I grow up." And I listed some of them. Thank God I didn't become any of the things I listed, but I love that I went back in time and found that phrase, "I am ambitious." So yeah, I think I was always ambitious. For me, just always, ambition was wanting to kind of make myself better, go to the next thing, level up, small town, how can I see the rest of the world? So that was the kind of ambition. I think an ambition to be curious, an ambition to certainly do well, be recognized in doing well and doing good work. But in the early days, you don't know where that ambition is going to take you.
I mean, ambition, it can be a loaded word. It can be a sort of gendered word. Was that ever something you were conscious of, that it could be a negative thing for a woman to be outwardly ambitious?
Yeah, I think I was conscious of that a lot in my career. I think it's one of those things, like, you're even afraid to say, "I am ambitious." That's why I'm glad you asked that question. I love saying I'm ambitious. That's who I was. That's who I am. I'm ambition. I have ambition now for different things. But I don't think there's anything wrong with ambition. But yeah, I think somehow it's, especially for women, it's somehow less, we're supposed to, I don't know, just wait for the gifts to happen or something. Just wait for people to come along and say, "It's your time now." But I think that's changed a lot since I started my career. I think you're seeing a lot of women just owning it and saying, "That's who I am." And I think that's a great development.
I'm going to ask a question, though, then I'll back up and do more of a chronology of your career. Did you find at some point in your career trajectory, there was a shift in how women were treated or even how you were treated?
It's sometimes hard when you're in the middle of it. You're too close to it. I would say, I left a big company career almost 3 years ago now. And GE made a lot of good changes toward women and diverse leaders in general, but there was always more that could have been done. I was the first vice chair of GE. I mean, after 130 years, why was I the first one in 2015? So as much change as I saw happening, I mean, I worked in media for half of my career, media, which is seemingly a progressive, all about diversity of ideas. It did not change fast enough. So I think I left corporate life a bit frustrated that things hadn't changed as much as I imagined they would after 25 years, 30 years working in companies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm so impatient. And then I think about how in 1974 was when women could first get credit cards without their husband. So it's like, it's been too long, but also not very much time in kind of the span of history. So I'm constantly thinking about that. I got a lot of questions from women who are interested in pivoting, or they were really taking it, they looked at your bio and they thought, wow, she's really moved, through things. And I know you started at a public radio station, and then you did local television reporting, and then NBC as a publicity coordinator. I do want you to tell your Ted Turner story. I know that was kind of towards the beginning of your career, but were you thinking about your next steps before they happened, or did an opportunity come up and you thought, oh, maybe that's what I should do? Like, how proactive were you in making those career decisions?
Yeah, I'd love to tell you I had this master strategy for myself and that I was incredibly proactive, but that would be a lie. I tended to just get in the situation and see what the next opportunity was, either things that I wanted, or oftentimes the work company I was in would say, you should think about this, or this, this is something we want you to do. So it's a bit of give and take that way. But I wish I had been a bit more of an architect of my career. I think I love what I did, but I also think I could have asked for things earlier. I could have been very clear. I remember once there was a job, I was at NBC. There was a job that had been open for 6 months and they hadn't approached me about it. And I was like, but I'm perfect for this job. And I was steaming that they hadn't contacted me. It's one of those classic mistakes that people often make. And so I finally got up enough nerve to go to the head of HR and say, like, I'd like to be considered for this job. Kind of like indignant. Why haven't you thought of me? And he looked at me and he said, well, the boss and I thought of you, but you're a young mother. This job requires a lot of travel, so we thought it wasn't right for you. I was so angry. Like, I one of those, like, I want to punch you. I'm glad I didn't. I got the job. But I learned a couple of good things out of that. I learned, like, they couldn't read my mind. And I have to be the one to decide what's right. If it was travel, my husband and I would figure that out. But if you don't state that, other people fill in the blanks. The other good thing that happened is that HR leader and I ended up working together. He became a mentor, and I think I became a mentor to him in a way to show him a mother with young children could do the job well. And he actually helped promote me, helped champion me for what became a really big next job for me after that one.
Mm-hmm. We talk about how people assume, well, my work will speak for itself, and it's quite the opposite. You have to speak for your work. But oftentimes we have, women feel uncomfortable, quote, singing their praises. So was that ever something that you felt, like you were bragging if you were to talk about your work? And if so, like, how did you get over it? How did you articulate your value consistently, right? So outside of maybe like an annual review.
Yeah, I don't know that I always did that well. I do think you expect that everyone's going to notice how hard you're working, how good you're working. I love that you touched some of this really early in your book about getting to the foundation. I had to do that foundational work in myself. Mm-hmm. I had to realize, because I'm naturally more introverted, I'm also shy and reserved. It meant I wasn't speaking up. I wasn't asking questions. I'd go to meetings and wouldn't say a word. How would anyone have any idea of what I'm capable of? And so I came to realize that that was holding me back. And so I had to take steps to get out of my own way. That was the first step. Forget promoting myself. I wasn't even saying anything. So I had to work on that. And then after a while, you just have to be like, I have to stick up for myself in a sense of know my story, be able to articulate my value. I would say I was always a bit uncomfortable bragging about myself. I would do it in the context of the team. I'd like to brag about the team because I'm part of it, but we all got the glory. And that was one way I found a way to feel I was putting myself out there to be part of the team and not just, and I just think it's good business practice because you are part of a team. Rarely, if ever, is it just you who's led to that success.
Mm-hmm. That's actually the advice that Sheryl Sandberg gives when she talks about the double bind, right? When women act assertively, it can be perceived as aggressive. And so a way to counter that is to talk about the team, although you have to make sure that you're still saying I, as you say we, right? You have to find the balance.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm kind of conflicted about that a little bit. I used to work with someone who this is one of the good things about him. He would count the number of times someone said I versus we. Ooh. And if they over-indexed on I, he'd pull them aside at the end of the meeting and go like, I counted you said I 17 times and we 3. Work on that. And I saw him do that enough. I over-indexed on the we. I always felt the we had to stand out more than the I. That being said, you do have to say, yeah, but I participated in that. I helped, you can't not take up for yourself or let people know that you're part of it. So it is a fine line.
Do you have specific examples? You talked about meetings, other ways, that you got out of your shell, anything that sort of instinctually comes to mind of a time when you took up space, so to speak?
Well, you mentioned, I wrote about this in my book, this story, when I worked at CNN, Turner Broadcasting early in my career. And Ted Turner at the time created CNN and Turner Broadcasting. He was sort of the Richard Branson of his day, a swashbuckling entrepreneur and very outspoken. I worked for Turner and for him for a year, leading communications in New York. I worked for him for a year and I was convinced he didn't know my name. I did good work. I showed up at things. He was always in New York doing events. And so I remember we were at the UN. I was very pregnant. I remember I was standing against the wall and the wallpaper blended with my horrible maternity dress. It was just this horrible floral print. And I looked like just a head sticking out of the wallpaper. And I remember at that moment thinking, oh my gosh, like, he doesn't know who I am and I've got to change that. So I said, okay, I'm going to go up and I'm going to reintroduce myself to him. He's coming out of the men's room. I go, hi, Ted, I'm Beth. I put my hand out. He looks at me like, are you crazy? Kind of like, I know who you are, but I don't know why you're doing this or what. And he goes to get my hand and then he pulls it back. One, he was zipping his fly, which was kind of in my memory, this etched in my stone. So he's like, and then he goes like, and just walked away. Like I know who you are. And it was this moment I remember feeling like incredibly proud of myself. It was so awkward. It was, it's etched in my brain. I share it because I want you to know it was so awkward. It was so awkward, but I did it. I went up to him, awkward as it was, I reintroduced myself. And so with those kind of things, I would just force myself to get out of my way. Networking or a team event or something where there's people you have to go meet. I would be the one at the chip bowl, and I would have to say to myself, no, you go meet one person, you go find out. So I'd go up to you, Claire, and I'd say, hi, Claire, I'm Beth. And then I could let myself go home. Maybe we said nothing more than, how are you? How are you? How are you? How are you? For 5 minutes. And then I left, but I did it. Next time I'd meet you and then I'd meet Ashley and then next time I'd meet 3 people. So it became a bit of a gamification for myself. And similar with like asking questions in meetings or pitching ideas, do your homework, have a question that's specifically tailored to your aspects. I mean, I'm not an accountant. I'm not going to go ask a question about GAAP accounting, but you bet I can ask about insights, trends, market, value proposition. So those kinds of things, like know what you're good at and use that to kind of push yourself as a way of strength.
I love that you said stay by the chip bowl. Did you get to the part in the book where I talk about meeting you or me not really meeting you? Because I stayed by the cheese and the wine and it was Ashley who went up to you and I was too nervous. I don't want to take up space from Beth's story, but I'm kind of laughing because I'm like, my version of the chip bowl was the wine and the cheese. Yeah. Networking, obviously huge. You kind of spoke to that. I get 1.5 million questions about mentorship and sponsorship, and I'm sure you answer 1 million questions about that. Piece of advice internally, how do you, quote, find a sponsor? Any, any thoughts on that?
Well, I think the first thing is just, you have to do good work. I
Yeah.
mean, you have to be associated with good work. You do have to have that short story. So whenever you meet somebody in the context of your work, whether it's someone in your company or a customer or a potential customer, have your really quick soundbite. Hi, I'm Beth. Here's what I do. Here's something I've worked on. And then maybe a question. Here's an issue I'm thinking about. What are you seeing? I always try to use trend. So you're engaging people. So I think that's the first thing you have to do, because people are like, oh, I know what she does. She's asked me an interesting question and she's a good listener. I want to learn more. So I think that comes first. And then just seek out people with curiosity. Say, I'd like to learn more about what you're doing, about that project. That's always worked for me. I early on didn't have a mentor. And I used to think there was something wrong with me. Again, somewhat shy. I didn't know how to get one. And I came to realize a couple of things. One, mentors come in many different packages. Mentors can be younger than you. They don't all have to be more senior than you. And the idea of a sponsor or a champion is a first step. That's just someone who knows your story and they're willing to promote your story because they like what you're doing in the organization. Usually they want more of it. It's not just because they like you. I mean, hopefully they like you, but they like the work you're doing. So again, lead with your work and your impact, and I think you'll find the sponsors will follow.
Mm-hmm. For people who are thinking, well, I don't really love what I'm doing, my advice is always, before you find a new job, let's see if at your current job you could carve out something. And so in your book, you talk about job crafting.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about what that is and how to do it?
Yeah, I love the idea of job crafting. A couple of psychology professors have written quite a bit about that. I'm blanking on the names now, but this idea of exactly what you said. I mean, there are a certain set of responsibilities you've been hired to deliver on. Yet you're in the middle of it and you see opportunities that aren't in that job description. Go for it. Assuming you're not grabbing responsibilities that somebody else is doing, which leads you down that political path, which I always advise to try to avoid. There was a woman I worked with who was just a great design person. And she worked in our communications team. And she started saying, hey, I'd like to do some visual design with our press releases. Next thing you know, she was doing visually showing our earnings reports in a way that made them so much easier to understand. And it took off. People were like, oh, I get this so much better. I want more of it. People started asking for Carolyn to do more work and bring more design and visualization. And before you know it, we created a whole team around her. I remember once working with a colleague who was really big on market insights. And what she did is she just started a newsletter. Every Friday, she'd send a little newsletter first to our team, then more people asked for it. And before you know it, once she created something that had internal currency, but she started to carve out more of a role for herself around this insight function. And so those are the kind of things you bring a perspective, a passion, just take a risk and start doing it. Start small. I mean, you're not asking for budget. You're not asking to create a whole new division. Prove it first. And my guess is, unless you work for, in a company that's very structured and isn't up for that, which may not be the right fit for you if that's the case, but give it a shot.
Mm-hmm. I love this term that you just said, this internal currency. How do you galvanize other people?
Ask them for help.
Okay, that's great.
You have to go to them. You need to be as clear as possible about the vision of what you're trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. First, what? Why us? Like, why are you leading it? Why do you need their help? And you're asking for help. So let's take that Carolyn, who did the design, set up the design effort. Once she just tried it. She didn't try it on like the most breaking press release the company ever put out. She tried it on something small, and people were like, hey, I like that. And she said, can you help me think of other places we can put it? Can you work with me on it? She went to IR, or investor relations. Can we test this out? She asked for help. People saw that it got benefit. It made them look better. Mm-hmm. I think that currency means it's not just making you look good because you've crafted something for your job. It's making the company better, finding out something in a way they couldn't have. And so that currency serves more than just you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I'm assuming that's integral to making the case when you are ready for budget. You want to show that there is a group of people who stand.
Exactly. And one of the things I would say I learned that surprised me, and I learned it painfully, is often in those cases, make sure you've got a couple of critics on your side. I find this is particularly important in any kind of change work, trying to push new ideas. Your instinct is to only get people who like your idea or like you, or you think, or you like them. And that's helpful. But often it goes against your instinct to reach out to people who are critical of your idea. Because often they have passion about it. They have expertise. Now, avoid the ones who say no to everything, because they're probably not going to like anything. But seek out the people who are tough critics, who are known as real critical thinkers. And that adds an additional kind of internal value when you could say, you know, again, back to this analogy of Carolyn in design, it wasn't just the communications team that liked it. I mean, IR liked it. Their investors say this made our company easier to understand. And when you can attach that sort of tough critic, oh, you mean investors like it? Oh my gosh, that's where the money is. Let's go there. So often seek out those people critical, because they will add additional, not only expertise, but they'll add additional heft to the value of what you've provided.
And then you'll be able to proactively, you can already imagine the pushback you're going to get and then proactively address it.
Exactly. Great point.
Yeah. I mean, listen, feedback, it's hard to take feedback, but it's also emotionally, it's hard to take feedback, but also not all feedback is the correct feedback, right? So how do you filter what you should take from somebody else's potentially critical feedback?
That is such a wise question. I'm going to ask you how you do it. I'll answer it first, and thinking I'm going to ask you how you do it. I think one of the things I learned, frankly, a little too late in my career, but never too late to learn it from value, is just one, to ask for feedback. Mm-hmm. And I learned to ask a really important question. Tell me something I don't want to hear, because usually you don't. Mm-hmm. And it takes practice to get people to feel comfortable giving you that answer. But you said it, just because you've asked for the feedback, it doesn't necessarily mean it's relevant to what you're trying to accomplish. But you have to listen to it. You have to consider it. What does that mean? Why are they offering that? Is that relevant to what I need to get done? And so I think you need to interrogate that a bit. Ask yourself. Regardless, I think you have to thank the person for giving you that feedback. And I try to, if possible, to go back and say, I heard you. If it's, you know, I'm not going to, I considered it, but I'm not going to do that because of this reason. Now, that's not always possible, but I think to create that feedback loop, then people feel comfortable next time. How do you do it, Claire?
I don't know. That's why I asked you. No, I mean, I guess the only thing I would add is, are they either the demographic, or are they somebody who would participate in this, right? So as I'm writing Ladies Get Paid, I didn't ask my dad for feedback for a number of reasons. Hi, Mom, I can see you on this call. But, you know, he's not my demo, right? So, of course, perspective is nice. But I wouldn't, like, that wouldn't make sense for me to ask. That doesn't mean somebody who's outside the demo doesn't have great ideas to give, but it would carry less weight, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, everybody has an opinion, but not everybody has a relevant opinion, or an informed opinion, or a perspective that's relevant to the situation. So that is great. I mean, when before you even ask the question, maybe be very selective, but not too selective. Again, sometimes the most unusual people, I remember, you know, I love nothing more than to get a bunch of marketers or innovation strategy people together. I remember once, one of our most innovative people we brought in was someone from our legal team. Oh. Now, my first reaction would have been, I'm never going to ask legal. What are they? They're just going to give me a bunch of bureaucracy. Oh my gosh. I'm thinking of one person on our team who was just a brilliant innovator. And had we not asked him, we would have missed out on a lot of great insights.
Interesting. Okay, but the critical feedback comes from your boss or whoever you're pitching your idea to. And it could be job crafting, and it could be an initiative. Now, I think some people say that women don't negotiate. I actually heard the opposite. Women do negotiate. They're just getting no's. And I think it might be because we ask once and we don't ask again. If you are getting a no, let's just say it's an initiative. How do you make a comeback? Or maybe an example from your own, when you received pushback, how
Yeah.
did you
Again,
work
this
with
is one of my favorite topics, because getting a no is really tough. And because, again, kind of shy, or you hear no, you're like, okay, it's over. I would fall in love with ideas, feel passionate about the homework I or my team had done. So I wasn't ready to take no. And so I started to learn, like, that became more of a motivator than just taking the no. So to me, I had to kind of do a mind shift that when someone said no, I'd be like, oh, I think what you're saying is not yet.
Mhm.
I must not have asked that right. Or give me more feedback and I'll come back again. I had a project I was working on one of the times I was at NBC. We wanted to pitch the NBC Experience store. I went to my boss at the time. He said no. We came back second time. He said no. We came back the third time. He looked at me, he said, Beth, the answer is yes. But I wanted to say no, but you made it so darned hard. And I believe you're going to make this happen. I've tested you. And that's what I came to realize, is he was testing us. He wanted us to see if we could make the returns better. Could we do more homework? He wanted to make the idea better, but he was testing us. Do we have the passion, the grit to go forward? And so oftentimes, I've seen this so many times where people come in, they'll ask the boss, he or she says no, and they slink out and you never hear from them again. And you think, but I thought they liked that idea. That they were fighting for that idea. And so to me, no is not yet is I've got to fire. I've got to find a way to make this happen. And sometimes maybe you're not the right person to keep going. Maybe you've got to then get with a team, find someone else who might be more credible in that situation or have more know-how. And that's a whole other discussion, but that's also what it means at times.
I want to shift the conversation a little bit to the innovation part of what you do. So don't know. I was looking back at notes because we've worked together before, and I don't know if you wrote this or if I wrote this, you probably wrote it. Quote, to train your brain to start thinking big, you must challenge yourself to find things that contradict what you know. Yeah, you wrote that. What is that? Tell us how to do that. That sounds so big.
Well, I think I'm big on just giving yourself a practice of discovery. To get out of your own way, to just get out in the world and see where things are happening. I have a simple rule of thumb going on 3s. First time I see something, I go, oh, that's interesting. I keep a notebook. In my phone, I have a folder of interestingness. Second time I see that theme, I go, ask myself, is that a coincidence? Third time, I just declare it's a trend. I don't care. I don't need an official trend report. And I set to work at going to know about it. And part of that process is you're trying to put yourself out there where you're finding new things and finding things that contradict you. You're going where things are weird. And most of us don't like weird. We want to go where we feel comfortable. And you're intentionally putting yourself out there. Weird has taken me to some of the craziest places in the course of my career. To show up in places where, going and judging boy bands when I was at NBC Digital in South Korea, because we were trying to learn about what was happening in Korea in digital. Sending a team of leaders to study with the military in Israel to understand what it means to have non-hierarchical leadership. That was weird to that group of people. So you have to get outside of what you know to find these patterns, to challenge yourself. And so I'd say really just simply, the weirder something is, the more you're going to learn. And take those notes. What can you challenge yourself? Maybe, Claire, just an exercise to get people to think to themselves. Have we been in any weirder time than the past 12 months? I mean, it can't get much weirder, or so we think. Think back 5 years ago, something you thought was totally weird. I don't know, Claire, can you think back 5 years ago? Is there something you thought was really weird that you're like, oh, that's so silly? But now today, it's kind of commonplace. I don't know, anything come to mind?
People weren't talking about the wage gap, and now they are. I don't know.
It's a good one. I mean, I think of getting in the car with a stranger. That might have been more than 5 years ago. I'm dating myself a little bit, but having a conference on video chat where we're all
you're right. This because you came to our in person, and then we had another one the year after with 1,000 people, and this time we had over 1,300 online. We're never going back to in person. Right. So you were that was a special experience and no one else will have it.
Yeah. So that's just constantly challenge yourself by things you think are weird. Start to think ahead. Okay, how might that take off? What might be different about that now? Anyway, it's a practice.
What are you seeing now? And I can hear Ashley in the background yelling, Bitcoin. I wish I said Bitcoin, but what are you seeing now?
Well, I've been really focused in kind of what I've been doing now, and much more of portfolio life that I have been very focused on climate technology and trying to push forward climate tech. I'm really intrigued about what's happening just in nature-based solutions, what people are doing. I mean, look at things, this is commonplace now, but look at all the new food, nature, plant-based food that's now commonplace. Even 2 years ago, we weren't having what we have in terms of alternatives. I think that's just going to continue. So that's one thing I've got my eye on. Democratization of agriculture and farming and some of those kinds of things have my attention right now.
What do you read, or what magazines do you subscribe to? Or, because I mean, I think the theme of everything that we've talked about really is curiosity first. So what sources, if you have any suggestions for where people can kind of get their minds jogging?
I read everything I can get my hands on. And again, I have a whole list of that are weird to me. I mean, these days I've been reading a lot on mythology, going down a sort of deep dive into psychology. And I mean, I think Twitter, LinkedIn, I think all the social platforms are really good for setting new filters. Just set new filters on Instagram, constantly look for discovery mechanisms. There are, Aeon is something I find really helpful. It's a kind of interest online magazine. They've launched a psychology version. That's something I could recommend that I read quite frequently. Emergence magazine is an online magazine I like a lot. Those are a couple that come to mind.
I think I'm going to need to follow up with you on that so we can put it in our email to everyone. That's great. I only have a minute left with you. So is there anything that you haven't shared that you want to share? And of course, the question you're probably getting is what's next? And how has retirement been? Are you itching to get back to work? Those are my final questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I would end with is just, I became somebody who liked to focus a lot on change when I was in a company, but what that often meant was change I thought somehow we had control of. And I left my company rather abruptly when there was a leadership change and came to realize firsthand the change you don't control is the change you like least. And most of us are in that situation right now. We're in this right now in a situation none of us chose. I can't imagine anyone would choose COVID as a lifestyle. And it tests your resiliency. And I think I am in a place now in this portfolio life. I'm working on a number of great projects, advising startups, looking to help scale some clean tech, also doing a lot of my own personal creative projects. I'm in a writer's group. I'm doing a lot of visual art. I'm part-time helping to restore some forest land. These are things I could not have done when I had a big corporate job. And I never could have imagined being that comfortable with a portfolio approach. And I think more of us are heading into more of a portfolio approach. I mean, you look at the number of people who are now freelancing either because their company job went away or because they're choosing a more fluid life. So I think the future of work is really much more fluid for all of us. And I'm witness to it. It's a lot of fun.
I see somebody, I don't know their name because it just says iPhone. They said, thank you for visiting us in Philadelphia, October 24th, 2018 with Rakia Reynolds.
With Rakia, yes, it was so great. Yes, I'm glad. I can't see who that is
either.
Oh,
it's Judy. Oh, Judy. I know. Hi, Judy. Yeah.
Yeah, Rakia is amazing. If you don't know Rakia, follow her on Instagram. She runs a company called Sky Blue Media, and she's just a great person at personal brand building, at stating her value and helping other people get their message out.
I love it. Oh my goodness. I wish this was longer, but thank you for the time that you gave us. And thank you also for, you're my first blurb on the back.
Well, Claire, I love the work that you do with Ladies Get Paid, the community that you've convened. I've always so valued being part of it. You and Ashley were a big help to me when I got my book out, helped me kind of figure out how do I take this and spread the message. So I'm just a big believer in what you're doing, and I'm really happy for you. And it's exciting for you at Good Morning America this week. Is that right?
Yeah. Tomorrow, and I saw Jamie wrote, somebody has an announcement. Tomorrow, I just was told 8:38 a.m. Eastern. They're so, I don't know if you've been on any of these shows, but they're like so scripted to the T. And no one has to feel bad for me, but at 3 a.m. my time, I'm in California, is my tech check. Like really fun. GMA, Robin Roberts. And what's very cool about this session is 3 women from the Ladies Get Paid community who are looking for work. We did a whole roundtable where they talk about what they're struggling with. And so that's kind of the foundation of the segment. And then I'll go in live and give advice. I'm really nervous. So no pressure.
I think that we know you're going to be great, but back to where we started, I think you're telling your story by telling the team story, right? It's not just Claire and I'm fronting this book. It's the Ladies Get Paid community, and here's how our community is reaching out. So everyone can take a great lesson from that.
Yes. And thank you. And I'm going to let you go. For those who want to stay, I'm going to be just reading the introduction of the book so you can hear about it.
Great. Good to see you all. Thanks for your time.
Ladies Get Paid story. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
So those who want to stay, of course, I'd be very grateful to you, but no pressure. And by the way, those who are asking about GMA, it will be, the segment I would say starts at 8 a.m., but I don't know who they're having on. And then I'm officially going live at 8:38. And so if I look confident, I'm not. Okay, we're gonna start with how it all began, and I'm happy to answer any questions about your careers or the book writing process. As those who have come to things with me before, you know I'm very honest and transparent. So anything you'd like to ask, I'm here to answer. Okay, how it all began. Before Ladies Get Paid the book came Ladies Get Paid the organization. It was born from 3 pivotal moments in my life. The first happened at an advertising festival. Anyone in advertising? Party after party, CEOs of major brands socialized and drank with those who wanted their business. It was mostly men. At the time, I worked for a professional platform that connected creatives with jobs, and I was there to find clients. The festival opened with an outdoor cocktail party. Whose wife are you? He was tall, probably around 60 years old, dressed in an expensive-looking white linen suit. It had been barely 5 minutes since I'd walked into the party. I gritted my teeth and stretched my lips into what I hoped was a smile. I'm here on business. This was going to be a long week. Around-the-clock networking is tiring. And it was, but what was even more exhausting was the invisible, though sometimes obvious, imbalance of power between genders. Men greatly outnumbered women, and their seniority dwarfed ours. I needed these men to send me their business, but so many saw me, and many of the other women there, not as valuable professional connections, but as people to party with. Repeatedly, I had to wrestle the conversation back to a place that was irrelevant to my work, or simply back to a place where I felt comfortable. It was draining, but I'd done this dance before. In fact, I'd been doing it my entire career. Something profound, though, happened toward the end of the festival. Needing to pee and needing a break, I sought refuge in the women's restroom. All right, guys, I'm going to tell you the inside story because you're here and stuff that's not in the book. Have you been hearing about Marilyn Manson? You can put it in the chat. The stuff that's going on, my mom's probably like, I don't know who that is. Okay. So the reason that I went to the bathroom is because I was in a conversation with Marilyn Manson, and there were like 2 other guys, Earmuff's mom, and Marilyn Manson was talking about the women he was like gonna fuck or wanted to fuck at the festival. And I was like, I need to remove myself from this conversation. Thank you all for coming to my reading, because now you get to hear the inside story. I decided not to include that in the book, but there you go. I sought refuge in the women's restroom. It turned out that I wasn't the only one. Crowded in there were women of all ages, huddled together, connecting and commiserating. They traded business cards and tips on who to avoid Marilyn Manson and who was actually serious about networking. These women had come to the festival to get shit done. It just happened to be getting done in the ladies' room. I spent some time there recharging, then took a deep breath and went back out into the fray. After the week was over, I slept for 2 days straight. I felt demoralized and a bit disgusted as I replayed each unsettling interaction over and over again, from Mr. "Whose wife are you?" to the guy who slurred, "You're hot," when I pitched him a business idea. Then my disgust turned inward. What had I done to attract this kind of attention? Was my dress too short? Had I been too friendly? This was an all too familiar loop, a constant refrain throughout my whole career, and maybe even my whole life. But for the first time, something short-circuited my self-doubt. For years, I'd been struggled to be taken seriously as a successful, ambitious woman, questioning myself in the process. This is a crazy experience. One memory stood out in particular. I was at dinner with a man a colleague had introduced me to, thinking we might partner on a project. Toward the end of the evening, he grabbed my hand and pulled me in to kiss him. I snatched my arm back. "Excuse me," I said in disbelief. The man looked utterly confused. "But you gave me your business card," he sputtered. Okay, true story, guys. The detail behind this is after he said that, I said to him, "But we're in the same industry. I would have been a fool not to have given you my business card." I didn't include that in the book, but here you go. Besides the fact that it was so here's the thing. I said that and I was really proud of myself, but I felt horrible for so long. And I obviously, no, I couldn't network with him afterwards, although he was very embarrassed too. Besides the fact that it was a troubling misinterpretation of signals, what stayed with me was the fact that I was being perceived as a potential sexual partner instead of a professional one, despite every indication that I was there to do business. And as a result, networking with this person, who otherwise could have been valuable for my work, was an opportunity I would not pursue. It also made me feel like shit. I had a realization. How many other times had I missed opportunities, not because of a lack of ability or performance, but because I was a woman? How many hours had I wasted agonizing about how to maneuver among men like these in this world that they had created? I thought of all the energy I'd wasted seeking approval from the men around me. I couldn't continue like this. Something needed to change. I opened my laptop and I Googled 3 words: women, work, and inequality. I remember this so well. What I learned shook me to my core. The majority of today's college graduates are women, yet less than 22% of us make it past middle management. The wage gap, which is usually referred to as being 78 to 80 cents to the man's dollar, is not the reality for everyone. Depending on your race and a myriad of other factors, including whether or not you're single, that's a factor, it can be so much worse. Black women make between 63 and 68 cents on the dollar, while Hispanic women make a mere 55 cents on the dollar. I was shocked. I felt angry. And on top of that, I was ashamed for not knowing it was that bad. And that reeked of my privilege. I'd grown up being told that I could do and be whatever I dreamed of, that our workplaces are a meritocracy, and that the fight for equality was over and won by my mother's generation. I was finally understanding this was not a reality, and I wanted to do something about it. As I continued to research women in the workplace, I discovered an entire vocabulary that put words to things I'd always felt but hadn't known how to articulate. For example, I learned about emotional labor, the contortionism that women, and especially women of color, perform to fit into and accommodate environments where they are not the status quo. All of this was enlightening, but it was also overwhelming. With such systemic entrenched bias, what could I, as an individual, possibly do? A year later, and yes, it was a full year before I did anything, I was approached by an art director friend of mine, Lita. She'd recently found out that a male art director friend of hers was charging almost double what she was. This discovery made Lita realize how little she knew about pricing and how important it was for this to be a larger, more open conversation with our peers. She was also concerned that the lack of transparency might mean other people were underpricing themselves, which in turn could be bringing down wages for everyone. Because I was the director of marketing for a platform that helped people find work, I was in a position to bring information and awareness to a large network of people. Lita wondered if there was something I could do to help women learn what they should be paid. It began to dawn on me that in so many ways, money symbolized much of what I'd been agonizing over in the past year. Money and having the same opportunities to earn just as much as men was about more than a number. It represented value, worth, and above all, power. All things that as women, we have historically been denied. This conversation with Lita happened during the lead up to the 2016 presidential election. As I thought about organizing an event for women to talk about money, I became intrigued by the town halls the candidates were hosting, and I thought it could be a good alternative in lieu of the format of a typical panel. I envisioned one made up of women of different backgrounds and professions, trading stories and advice about money in an open forum, essentially democratizing a subject that had always seemed to be the domain of experts, men. More important, it could finally get us talking about a topic that was taboo, that was considered crass, but that men seemed able to navigate with ease. Maybe if one of us spoke up, others would follow. All we needed was a bit of encouragement. To get people to sign up, I asked 6 women I admired if they would be open to sharing their money stories. I also asked each of them to recommend a few women they thought should be there. For every woman I was introduced to, I asked if they could recommend another woman who might want to attend. This went on until we reached capacity. The day of the event, 100 women came. By the way, it was a tiny apartment in New York too. They crowded together on couches, spilling out onto the floor, passing around bottles of wine, buzzing with energy. It reminded me of the ladies' room at the advertising festival. It was my first public speaking experience, and I knew I didn't have all the answers. I was there to learn just as much as they were. I told the room that we would get out of the event only as much as we were willing to give. To receive help meant we had to offer it. We raised our glasses to one another and we began. It was like a cork shooting out of a champagne bottle. One story begat another as these women opened up to one another and to themselves. They shared stories of disappointments and struggles, missed opportunities, denied promotions. There were lots of tears, but lots of high fives too. One woman stood up and declared, "I'm an illustrator and I make a shit ton of money." She got a standing ovation. It's Julia Rothman, by the way, if you want to look her up. She has an amazing column in the New York Times. I was right. This conversation was about so much more than the dollars in our pockets. It was about solidarity. It was about self-worth. It was also about taking action to right the wrongs that we'd been laboring under. We could no longer wait and hope to be rewarded. Money was the first step, a tangible thing that could mark progress on what was sure to be a long road ahead. I'm almost done with the introduction. You're also amazing for sticking around. To close the wage gap, we could start with ourselves by advocating for our worth. But for all of us to rise, we needed to work together. 3 hours later, the event was technically over, but no one was leaving. I was becoming antsy since the venue was charging me by the hour. "Go home," I shouted as I turned off the lights. Everyone reluctantly shuffled out, and I could hear them discussing what bar to go to. They didn't want the conversation to end. As one of the women walked out, she pulled me aside. "This," she said, motioning around the room. "You should do this." I didn't know what she meant, but something magical had happened that night. On my way home, I felt electric. That energy in the room was coursing through my veins and my mind was racing. It had been over a year since I'd Googled workplace inequality, and I thought that maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something big, something that could lead toward making things right. While I didn't quite know what was next, perhaps the first step was simply for us to share our stories as we had done that night. I created a Slack group that night too. Over the course of the next 12 months, I organized 250 town halls in 19 cities, bringing together thousands of women to talk about money, power, work, and self-worth. And every time a woman got up to speak, she discovered she was not alone. As I watched them, I knew there had to be a way to harness the strength we have when we come together. I wanted to see it move beyond those rooms and those town halls to build an even larger collective that could allow us to learn from one another, encourage one another, and share practical advice and professional guidance to get us where we wanted to be. The town halls were our catharsis, but with no action afterward, all that inspiration and energy would be wasted and nothing would change. While organizing these events, I witnessed the power in peer-to-peer sharing, but I also saw there was a great need for concrete tools to fix actual problems. One topic that kept coming up at the town halls all across the country was insecurity surrounding salary negotiation. Teaching more women how to negotiate their salaries wasn't a big picture structural change, but it could at least start moving the needle in the short term. As I fit the pieces together, I knew there was something special happening, but what I didn't know was that a movement was being born. This one area of actionable change became the cornerstone of our movement and a springboard for accessing and improving broader issues impacting women in the workplace. As of this writing, the Ladies Get Paid community has grown to more than 100,000 women who are all working together to advance women in the workplace. In this book, I will share the stories of 9 members. Some names and identifying details have been changed. Nothing has really been changed except for names. And there's one chapter that is a composite, and I'll let you figure out which chapter that is. Each in their own way, these women battle internal and external struggles, pushing up against the bounds of what they and others expect of themselves, and are ultimately able to reach places of purpose, fulfillment, and power. For many of them, this meant undoing assumptions and rebuilding expectations, examining where they came from, and becoming clear on what direction they will go. In their stories, I will highlight what they can teach us. In those moments, I hope you will reflect on your own life and how you'll use these tools to rocket yourself forward. This book is organized into 4 parts. The first part explores the obstacles that we may have in ourselves. We'll examine expectations we may have inherited from our families, the media, our communities, and other influences about what career success looks like and what we can achieve. From there, we'll learn to identify and evaluate opportunities to make sure we are headed on a path that's aligned with our values and goals. Then we'll break down imposter syndrome and perfectionism, 2 major internal roadblocks, often resulting from systemic and cultural obstacles that stand in our way of feeling and doing our best. Now I'm almost done. In the second part of the book, we'll broaden our focus. You'll learn how to build and leverage your network to get you where you want to go. This includes interviewing, securing, and negotiating for a new job. But getting the job is only the first step. You need to also set yourself up for success. That means educating yourself on how to develop healthy work habits for the long game. Things like conducting an inventory of your energy and setting boundaries for yourself and others so that you don't burn out. You can't do well if you aren't well. Then we'll explore how to navigate upward, cultivating a support system, increasing our visibility, and taking advantage of opportunities. The ultimate goal? To seek out rewarding challenges and do our best work in a place that recognizes and rewards us. At a certain point, however, trying to do well in a system that was not made by or for us is not good enough. The system itself has to change. The final part of the book is about what we can do to make our workplaces more inclusive and supportive of women, including policies and practices companies can implement to make that happen. But for true systemic change to happen, we need updated and evolved laws. The appendix includes information on how to lobby your elected officials to enact laws that ensure wide-ranging and long-lasting progress. If you buy the paperback version, by the way, there'll be an even more updated appendix. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that some of the lessons in this book come from a place of relative privilege. Being able to walk away from a negotiation or turn down a job are luxuries. And while as women we are bound together by our marginalized status, my experience in the workplace as a white cisgender woman is not the same as that of a Black woman or Hispanic woman or a woman with a disability or a trans woman or any of the countless women in groups pushed to the fringes of society who have been fighting these battles for generations. I firmly believe that we have progressed only as far as those who still struggle the most among us. If we're going to make meaningful change, it has to benefit all of us and not just some of us. And we have to do it together. Let's get started. And on that note, let's finish this up. I'm here for questions. Next 5 minutes. I want to hear everything you want to ask me about. I really appreciate the lovely notes and the chats. And I got some great facial expressions, particularly around the Marilyn Manson. So that was great. Go Claire. Ashley's in the other room saying that. Thank you. Good teamwork. So appreciative of you guys coming to this event. You may have come to the other book tour events. Speaking of which, her campus. Yes. Speaking of which, let me tell you about the next 2 events. Just so you know, the next webinar is on February 9th at 6 p.m. and it's called The 5 High Value Habits of 6-Figure Entrepreneurs. And then for the book tour, our next one is on February 11th at 6 p.m. and it's with Dara Tressiter, who's the Senior Vice President at Peloton. So she's totally kicking butt there. And then after that, it will be, I believe, February 17th with Mina Harris, who's the founder of the Phenomenal Women campaign and the author of Kamala and Maya's Big Adventure. I have to look that up. She's also Kamala Harris's niece and was wearing a fabulous dress on the stage at the inauguration. By the way, and I got a nice little private message, which is really great. What I would love, my friend here with the private message, and any of you who do have questions, the best place to get in touch with me and to stay updated is to follow me on Instagram, because my emails are, don't email me, it brings me a lot of anxiety there. So just go to Claire Gets Paid. I do respond to all DMs. I'm also going to just, because, you know, Beth was here, you probably want to learn more about her, and her book is also phenomenal. There you go. I put in a link. That being said, I put in Amazon. You definitely don't have to support Amazon. I understand if you don't, which is really good, actually, because this bookstore that's hosting us, Oblong Books, fabulous bookstore, independent bookstore. If you purchase from them, and I'm going to drop in the link right now, it's a signed copy. If you care about my signature, I've been working on it for years. And also, you'll obviously be supporting them. So I put in both Imagine It Forward's Amazon, because that's what I found, Oblong, which is me. If you do read the book and you enjoy it, writing an Amazon review goes a long way for authors. So I highly encourage you to do that. And thank you all. Thanks for spending time with me. And again, if you purchased the book, read the book, I love you very much. And I also love you all if you didn't, but hopefully, oh, good. Oh, hooray. Caitlin got hers. I know Jamie, I know you got one. Judy, oh, thank you for all being my friend, because it's quite lonely writing and it's COVID. So Lay, great. And yes, somebody asked, is there a way to convert non-Amazon ebooks to be Kindle compatible? Well, it is on Kindle. You can download it on Kindle. I'm not sure about converting. And also, I joke about this, but if you're not too bothered by my voice, I did read it. It was very interesting hearing my own voice reading 320 pages. So you can listen to that. And thanks. I mean, if there's no questions here, I'll let you all, have lives. So there you go. And thanks, Mom, for being here. I love you very much. And everybody else. And maybe I'll see you on GMA, 8 a.m. Eastern, though wherever you are, there's a local listing. And I'm going to be putting up this recording on our YouTube channel, so you will get that in your inbox the next day or so. Thanks, everyone. Now go get paid. Bye.